Welcome to the pit. Welcome to the Pitwall Panic Podcast. This week we got quite a bit going on. We have seen a whole lot of madness going on in Australia. We have seen a whole lot of rapid rebuilding of cars in Australia. So we're gonna get into some of this tonight. Uh, Before we do though, I'm gonna go ahead and let everybody know. As you can tell, I am by myself this week, and that will be the theme going forward. Alan and Amber have decided to step away from the podcast, leaving just myself. You might see some guest hosts here and there, um, but for now, it's just me. So, you get to hear a lot of my takes. And whenever the guests come on, you get to hear their takes. With that being said, we're going to get into what's going on with Australia this weekend. I think it was very clear that a lot of the predictions that were being made for after based off of preseason testing are obviously not far off the mark. At least that we made. So the ones that we were making were that it was going to be between George and Charles mainly for the drivers' championship. I think that's going to be pretty accurate based off of how Australia went. I know it's just the first race of the season and a lot can happen. We still have 23 races this season. But based off of just how fast they were this weekend, teams are going to have to make a lot of big jumps. Obviously, Max can throw his hat in the ring for that, and he had a bad qualifying, which really hurt him, and we'll get into that more later. But I think this just proves that Ferrari and Mercedes are that far ahead of everybody else, and that Charles and George are going to be leading these teams. Now, I will say Lewis looked a lot better yesterday than he did last year for Ferrari. Like it ultimately looked like he was going to be able to give Charles a fight, especially that last lap for the podium, which is great to see as a Ferrari fan. Now it's not just one driver that is fighting for the podiums, and the other one is staying in points but not really fighting for the big points. And also, as just seeing Lewis on an uprise is nice because nobody wants to see him go out the way he was driving last season or even the last few years at Mercedes. So it's nice to see this change with Lewis. As far as the things that we saw out of McLaren, I said this year I thought they were not going to be in the fight. Even with Ferrari's terrible strategy, it was horrendous what they did. Two VCs and you choose not to pit was blew my mind. That is the name of the game of Ferrari though, is let's just not use common sense at times. But even with that, Lando was still 45 seconds off of Lewis. Not 45, 35 seconds off of Lewis. If they pit in the VSC, it's like a 10-second faster pit stop. In which case, Lando's 45 seconds off of it. Either McLaren's going to have to really come out of development, or Oscar's just going to have to be killing it in this car and make up the difference between him and Lando. Because that's not going to win any kind of constructors' titles. I agree with chat. I think that if Ferrari pit under the VC, then or VSC, then there's a good chance it's a 2-3 for Ferrari, potentially a 1-3. Charles afterwards said, "I don't think we could win the race." Charles has been known to be a cynic though, and has said, "Oh, I don't think we're going to win this weekend," and then he goes out and wins. So I take that with a grain of salt coming from him, and I almost don't know if he's doing that to downplay the car. because the car looked so fast. That start was phenomenal. Um, the start was something that everybody predicted, but just seeing it done was fantastic to see. Now, I know we went straight into the race, but let's look at qualifying for a second, shall we? What can, like, those mechanics for Mercedes are absolutely insane. Kimi Antonelli just absolutely destroyed that car with like 10 minutes left in FP3. And a few hours later, they're still working on this car in Q1. And they get it rebuilt in time for him to go out and get one hot lap in. That is huge because the fact that he got out of Q1 made that possible. If he does not have that car built and has to start at the back of the grid, he's not making the podium. Kimmy's good. He's not that good. Even Max didn't get it back to the podium or even have a chance at fighting for one. And we saw that that Red Bull is not terrible. Hadjar qualified third, so the car is not terrible. But he still couldn't do it. I think Ferrari and Mercedes are just too fast that if you do have a shot and you have a bad qualifying, there is no shot. You have to hope that they put it in a wall or have some kind of catastrophic failure mechanical wise. So I think that that is very, very important that they got that done, and it shows just how great those mechanics are. I think the mechanics don't get enough love in F1, and then they do stuff like this, and they might get talked about for a day or during that qualifying, and then nobody talks about it again. But without them, Kimi would have never, in a million years, got back on the track in time. And I know Max basically just losing the rear end really helped because the red flag gave him a little bit of time. But still, I don't think people understand how insane it is. They basically rebuilt that whole car in a matter of hours. That's just like insane. Yet they somehow pulled it off. Now, Max losing the car, I don't know if that's indicative of the car is not as grippy or have as much handle as people expect. I know some people have said that some of the drivers have said these cars drive like F2 cars. So maybe that's part of it, and he just lost the rear end because of it. I don't remember him locking up. I think he just lost the rear end, which is really hard to imagine out of Max because that's just not how he drives. I mean, it barely ever happens to him. So I think that's just, again, another blessing in disguise for Kimi because without that, does he get the car out there? I don't know. Does he get it out there? I think he gets it out there. Does he get it out there in time to get a warm-up lap and a push lap in? I don't know. If he doesn't, he's starting in last place, which, that's terrible. Also, how does Cadillac feel that Alonso and I think Stroll, at least Alonso, outqualified them? That Aston Martin is so terrible that for the past week or two, the only thing people have been talking about is how bad that car is. And they still outqualified Cadillac. Now, I will say I do like how Bottas and Perez handled it. They got back to the garage, and over the radio, they go, hey, guys, good job. We made it through a qualifying session. We did a great job here. Now we just have to find pace. We have reliability. Now we have to find pace. So I like the optimism and the understanding that this is a new team. Let's not just rip into them and say, oh, y'all built a crap car. This is your fault. And tear down morale. We see them build up the team, and I think that Cadillac has a lot of good things behind them. It's just going to take time. Don't forget, Andretti is attached to this. And Andretti is potentially one of the greats in motorsport, period. So when you look at Andretti's IndyCar team, they are one of the top teams. I think he will bring that with him to F1. I think in the next few years, Cadillac maybe not be a top 4 team, but they're going to be a fighting for the best of the rest team. I honestly see that happening. I think this year is going to be rough. And depending on how development goes through the year, next year could be rough as well. So we have to hope that they start figuring out. On the bright side, they can't get any worse. I mean, you think about in qualifying, Perez lost a right side mirror, Bottas lost a left side mirror, and then during the race, Perez lost part of the car. They basically said, they told us we had to have 50% of this car painted. They didn't say 50% of the car had to cross the line. We're going to shed weight by losing parts. So, I mean, you know, this is reliable, but we got to keep parts on the car. Yeah, they can't get any worse. Well, no, let me take that back. They can get worse. Aston Martin is worse right now. They can barely keep the car on the track. I'm impressed that they said, the vibration is so bad that they weren't going to be able to do. Lance Stroll said 15 laps, and Lance Stroll said 15 laps, and Alonso said 25. Yet they went out there and did a whole race. Granted, Alonso had to stop once, maybe twice, and Lance went the whole time. I mean, I think Lance ended the race 12 laps down, but still, I think that's going to help. I hope that's going to help Aston Martin get the data that they need to actually improve this car, because if not, this car is rough. This car is almost too dangerous, in my opinion, to put on that track, because you end up getting somebody killed potentially. If you can't keep catastrophic failures from happening, can't risk the driver's hands going so numb they can't really feel what they're doing. That's a problem at 200 miles an hour. So, I mean, I worry about how long is it going to take them to develop that car. But, like I said, yes, Cadillac got beat by Alonso. At least they finished ahead of them in the race. Now, I know everybody's big thing probably this week is Oscar Piastri wrecking out before the race even starts. Is that a big deal for Mercedes or for McLaren? I'm going to say yes, because, like I said, unless if Oscar has that pace to keep them in the fight, that's huge that he's not there for Australia. That's one. Two is, so far, the past 2 years, he hasn't run Australia without an issue. He's had some kind of issue each time. Last year, after the rain stopped, lost the car, ended up shooting across the track and almost beaching the car on the grass. Got it out still and just lost a ton of time. Went from being on the podium to nowhere near the podium. So, I mean, I think that's a big deal. Now, chat's asking, what happened to Bottas? Did the car oversteer or lock up? I didn't catch that. Bottas didn't finish the race because I believe the car just had power failure. It either had power failure or hydraulic failure. Can't remember which one. So he basically pulled over right before the pit lane and just cut it off, which caused another virtual safety car. Then also, that was one of those that was very frustrating because Ferrari had a chance to pit at that time, didn't went around the pits again, and then if they decided, okay, we're going to pit this time, pit road was, or pit lane, whatever you want to call it, was closed because they had to push Bottas's car back through there. So obviously that's dangerous for the marshals to leave it open. So Perez finished the race, Bottas didn't. Again, yes, that happens. Is that a major red flag for Cadillac? I don't think so, because there was just so many issues throughout the weekend. Hulkenberg didn't even get to start the race. I need figure out why. I didn't see why he didn't start, because I know he qualified. I want to say top 10. I'll look that up. Let me make sure I'm giving y'all proper information. Yeah, so Nico Hulkenberg qualified 11th. So the car went through Q2. Um, and then he didn't start the race. Now, what's interesting is we look at the talking about these new cars and the new regulations. Not classified, meaning they didn't finish the race, or so far lapped that basically didn't finish the race. We have Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas, Isaac Hadjar, Oscar Piastri, and Nico Hulkenberg. 2 of those cars didn't even start. That's 6 cars that didn't finish the race out of 22. Obviously, we saw Oscar wreck. That, I mean, that's not necessarily a car failure. He just lost the car. Nico Hulkenberg didn't even start the race, so that's an issue. Isaac Hadjar, when you're watching the race, just all of a sudden he lost the gearbox, RPMs went through the ceiling, all of a sudden you start seeing smoke, so I'm going to assume he blew the engine after the RPMs skyrocketed from losing the gearbox. Bottas, like I just mentioned, was either engine failure or hydraulic failure, so he didn't finish. And then Fernando Alonso didn't finish, but that's just because nobody expected them to. They had too many issues from the beginning, so that was expected. Lance Stroll finished. No, he didn't. He only did 43 of the 58 laps and was 15 laps down. So, again, didn't expect him to finish, but at least he got 43 laps in. 15 laps down is rough, though. It's going to be an interesting season. At least this year, we have 2 teams that are going to be dominant if there is just a complete pony race here. And it's just going to be run away with. At least there's 2 teams. It's not just going to be like the year that Max just ran away and there's just one driver running away with it. That opening stint, it was a lot of back and forth between Charles and George. That was nice to see. So I think that that's why I think that if Ferrari pitted and had proper strategy, they may not have won. But I think that Mercedes with clean open air is just too fast. I think it's going to be a great qualifying car, because when you're qualifying, you're going to mostly have open, clean air. If it's in dirty air, it doesn't seem to have the same power. Otherwise, it would have just ran away from Charles and just blown away Charles, and he didn't. So I think that if they can keep George reined in and keep Kimi reined in, that Mercedes is just not going to run away like it did. And then with Kimi, it's going to come down to the lack of experience. I think that's going to help. If we, put Charles with Russell with George and put Lewis with Kimi, Kimi's going to get beat by Lewis 9 out of 10 times, I think. And in this scenario, just because he has more experience, he's going to be able to handle the car better. I think that it's going to be hard to say. I think it's going to be a fight like we saw between Oscar and Lando last season, but this season it's going to be Charles and George. I've said that from the beginning. I continue to think that. And then I think it's going to come down to Lewis and Kimi to decide who ends up winning the constructors, Ferrari or Mercedes. I don't see McLaren in this fight. The car was too far behind. Now, the wrench that gets thrown into this is that they figure out the reliability of that Red Bull. Isaac Hadjar looked really good. And then him and Max together could potentially make this a 3-way fight. I genuinely think this could be a 3-way fight. But if they have a ton of engine reliability issues, this is the first year they've built their engine, built their gearbox, deal with all of that. So if they continue to have issues, which is possible, I think that takes them out of that fight. Mercedes isn't going to have that issue. Ferrari's not going to be having that issue because they've been building F1 engines for ever now. And I think what's going to ultimately, when we're talking engines, I think what's going to be the determining factor throughout the season is I just don't see Mercedes having that edge whenever the new testing regulations come out and they test the engines at ambient and they test them while they're hot. So I think them having to change the engine is going to really hurt them. Right now, they're able to run their engine at an 18:1 ratio whenever compression ratio throughout the race, because the hotter their engine gets, the better the compression ratio. But once the new regulation kicks in, I think it's in July is when it kicks in, it's going to stay 18:1 the whole, or not 18:1, 16:1 the whole time. So if they don't figure out how to compensate that, I don't see them being in the fight. I see it being a close fight the first half of the season. That kicks in, and then Charles and Lewis just runs away from there. I could be wrong, and Mercedes ends up building another monster engine in that short amount of time. But this is the engine that they developed the whole time since 2025 until now. So I don't see them being able to compensate for that fast. It's just not going to happen. I could be wrong. I don't see that happening. Now, I think also the other interesting thing is we see Haas. We said that more than likely we thought, or at least I thought, that they would be the best of the rest. They'd be number 5. And sure enough, we have them looking really good right now with them coming in with, I'm looking at the results right now, Oliver Behrman came in at 7th place. And that puts them at the best of the rest right now. You have them, then VCarb, then Audi, then Alpine. So Alpine kind of didn't do what I expected. I expected Colapinto to do better. He looked really good in preseason testing, and then he just dropped the ball this race. Could it just be Australia's not his track? That's possible when you think about the fact that this is his first full season. The one track I believe that he had not run yet, or not one track, but you look at Bahrain, I believe he'd already run that. He never ran Australia, so this was new to him. So we'll see how it comes out once he starts getting on tracks that he knows compared to tracks that he hasn't ran yet in F1. The other big surprise for me this weekend was honestly Arvid Lindblad and Liam Lawson. I expected the roles to be reversed. We've talked about how in F2, Lindblad was 6th place in the driver's standings, and we thought he was getting moved up too early. And then he came out and had a phenomenal race. Ended up 8th place. Liam Lawson ended up 13th place. I expected him to come out and just crush it if the car was good. And obviously the car is not bad if you have a rookie putting the car in 8th place. So what happened to Lawson, I don't know. Now the other question becomes, Liam Lawson probably is feeling pressure, if I had to guess. If he does not give results this year, unless Mekis changes it from the way it's been, I don't see him racing after this season if he gets beat by his teammate who's a rookie. And if it's like regular and pretty bad, do they pull him out? They've already said that they moved Yuki over there to VCarb as a backup driver or as a reserve driver because they want feedback from him to help develop the car. The thing is yes, he did help develop the car the last iteration, and we saw what kind of car he helped create. But they also know that in that car, Yuki is really good. So Liam has to be feeling pressure on, if he doesn't perform, they're going to put Yuki in the seat again. And imagine how that would feel. He lost his seat at Red Bull, and they gave it to Yuki. If he loses his seat at VCARB and they give it to Yuki, just imagine how devastating that would be. Not only that, more than likely that would be his exit from F1. And he'd have to go to another motorsport title or just be completely out of racing. Imagine being out of F1 and the same guy takes your seat twice. That would be crazy and devastating. Now the other big surprise to me is Carlos Sainz. I know that they were having some issues with the car for him, and maybe he was still having some issues, but I honestly expected more out of Carlos. I think we'll see better results out of him with time to come. That car is not great though, to say the least. We were talking about it being overweight, but Alex was still able to get in 12th place. So, they get the weight under control. This car could be in the points on a regular basis, which is, I think, good for Carlos, because if it's in the points on a regular basis, knowing how Carlos drives, that means he can get it on a podium. And probably more than once throughout the season. So we'll just have to wait and keep our eyes peeled on him. Again, Cadillac looked bad. Just pitiful. They were, I'm trying to see how far off the pace they were. They were 3 laps down by the end of the race. They were the only team to have a person that got lapped 3 times, which that's insane thinking about being lapped 3 times. And Australia's not exactly a super short track for that to happen on. It's not like they were running Austria, which is a fairly short track compared to Australia. His fastest lap was 3 seconds off of Carlos Sainz, who finished 1 place ahead of him. The next slowest lap was a 124 486, and he ran a 126.070. That's just how slow this car is. They have to find pace. How they do that, I don't know, but they have to find pace. I think if they don't, it's going to be a very long season. We saw that. Then the person that we saw get driver of the day was Max. That did not surprise me at all. Max drove the wheels off that car, starting off down at the end of the grid after wrecking, and then bringing it all the way back up to 6th place is just phenomenal. I think it's something that most people expected out of Max, and if possibly the Mercedes or the Ferrari had been a little bit slower, I think knowing Max, there would have been some kind of way, or even if there had been a safety car, if there had been a full safety car instead of a VSC, I think Max would have tried to weasel his way into fighting for a podium, and it would have been like Brazil all over again. But sadly, he didn't get that chance. I know a lot of Max fans are sad about that. I know a lot of Lando fans are sad about 5th place. He is not holding that number 1 number at the end of the season. I don't see it. The car just does not have pace. And it's not like last year where at first he wasn't winning races, but he was at least podium every single time. He was 5th place. And keep in mind, you're watching the race, the announcer say, well, if he finishes 5th place, he qualified 5th, so he's not losing anything. But he kind of did, if you think about it. Because who qualified ahead of him? Isaac Hadjar did. Isaac Hadjar didn't finish the race, so if he doesn't lose any positions, he should go into 4th. But he finished 5th still. Lewis got around him. I mean, that Ferrari was just, again, insane. It was like the Mercedes, and I don't think Lando had a shot regardless, but I think that in itself proves Lando's car in that McLaren does not have the ability to fight for the title this year. And I think, I'm trying to think of how to word this so that I don't get attacked again online. Um, Lando, very much so, is a good driver, but Lando cannot overcompensate for a car. If the car is bad, Lando is not winning races. If that was not the case, Lando would have been winning races before 20, what was that, 2024? When he won his first race? He could have won in that 23 car if he could overcompensate for the car, possibly. Lance has put terrible cars on a podium. So I think that in 23, he could have potentially won races. Now, and even in 24, the beginning of the season, he could have, because the car wasn't terrible. It wasn't as great as it was at the end of the season. But he didn't win his first race till Miami, which was after the halfway point. I don't think Lando has it in him to overcome a bad car. So, this car does not seem to have the same power it had last season. It's not a missile like it was last season. I don't think he necessarily needs a missile to be the best driver on track and to win the constructor or win the driver's title. But I don't think he can win it in a car like they got right now. Chat saying they wonder if strategy will make a play. My thing is when you finish, I'm trying to do the math real quick. I think it was 35 seconds off the pace. So when you finish 35 seconds off the pace and Ferrari dropped the ball in strategy, strategy is not going to help you. It's not. It might help close that gap some, but you're not closing 35 seconds with strategy alone. There's just not enough possibility with that. They would have had to have like 2 or 3 more safety cars and Lewis and Charles still not pit, I think, and have full safety cars for that make a difference. And nobody's going to screw up strategy that badly. Not even Ferrari. So I don't see. They're going to have to make that car better to have a shot. Just plain and simple. So the question now becomes talking about something that I had seen the other day. You get 2 battery charging systems or 2 battery systems for the season. And I have read, now I don't know 100% that this is factual. This is something that I have read on social media. So take this for what it could potentially be worth. I'm going to do more digging on this. And if I find it, I'm going to do a short on it for TikTok or for YouTube. And YouTube. But I have seen that George Russell's already had to change that component one time. So that means he has 1 left. Now, if he burns through the 2, yes, he can change. But that means he's going to have to take a penalty. Could this be a faulty part? Yes, it could have been. But if it's not just that it was a faulty part, that's not good if you're burning through this thing and we're only at the first race of the season. We have 23 races left. And if this is true, that's going to be really bad for both him and Kimi, because when you start replacing parts that you were already over, like power units, for example, then you start taking grid penalties. If they take grid penalties, I don't think they can overcome that with Ferrari. That car was so fast. Yes, the Mercedes was faster in clean air. But if you're starting on grid penalties, you're not going to be in clean air. And if that Ferrari is up at the front, they are going to be in clean air. Did they run away with it when they had the clean air? No, but they were also on older tires. So I just don't see it happening if they start running into those kind of issues. Could it be a freak thing? Yes. Could this information also be just rumored? Also, yes. But I think it'll be good for Mercedes. George getting as many wins in the beginning as he can. I think it'll boost morale. It'll keep the momentum going. And we'll see where it goes from there. But they have to keep the fight. I think if Ferrari starts running away in the first half or starts winning more races in the first half, come the second half, it's a wrap. And or Ferrari just locks it in from there. And then not only that, you look at Max last season, he did cover, what was it, 104-point gap, 140-point gap? It was something insane like that. And then you give him the opportunity to come back and pass you. I think George is in that same boat that Lando was in, where a lot of people doubt that he could win a championship. Many people have said that of the drivers that came in together, Charles would win one before George. I've seen that in different places. A lot of people expected him to beat Lando to it. Now George is in that. Lando has won one. George is the least likely to, so he has the chip on his shoulder to prove it. George came in as, I'm learning from Lewis, and people always said Lewis will be better. Even though in the later years George looked better, people still argued that Lewis was the better driver. So now, and then people also doubted if he'd be able to take over the team and lead the team, and I think he disproved a lot of that last season. And now he has to go win him a title, I think. I don't think that if he does win one, he's going to pull a Lewis and run a 6-season, 7-season, win streak for the title. But I think he needs to win one now. I think that goes for both him and Charles because that Ferrari looks so good. And I think the other part of this is Ferrari didn't run their special wing. Now the question is, did they make this big fancy looking wing to distract people? Or were they just not comfortable with what they saw in the data and they're trying to revamp it before they throw it in or an actual race? Nobody will know until that time comes, I don't think. And then we probably still won't know. But when they put it in, if they can get that in even before the mid-season break when the new rules kick in, will it compensate for their lack of power in the straights? We've seen that they are a lot faster in the corners. On the higher speed tracks, though, they have a smaller turbo, so they're a little bit slower in max speed and top speed. So maybe that wing comes into play then. We'll just have to wait and see, I think. And then if it does, and they can start winning before, again, I don't see Mercedes overcoming the new engine. Just what happens from there. It's hard to say. I know it's only one race in the season. Anything can happen from here out. As far as other news that I have seen, if I see one more Aston Martin fan saying, oh, they're sandbagging, oh, this, oh, that, they're just hiding stuff. Y'all got to be realistic here, people. That car is garbage. This might be the worst car in F1 history. And I mean that completely. This car is so bad, they're talking about causing nerve damage in drivers' hands. And people are like, oh, they just don't want to show people what the car can do. No, the car's trash. And I don't know if it's getting better because at least they finished the race, but that when you go into a race weekend going, we don't know if we can run the whole race, that's a problem. The bare minimum is put a car on track that can run the whole race. That is the bare minimum. Cadillac did that. But neither one of your drivers finished, and it's not because they just wrecked or anything of that nature. It wasn't even driver fault. It's just the car is so bad and nobody even expected them to finish a race. Imagine being that bad. It's just, how do you overcome that? And it's frustrating because I expected when I saw that Adrian Newey was going to Aston Martin last year or year before last, I said, okay, in the next couple of years, this car is going to be throwing themselves into the mix to be in the top 4. Just because Newey is that guy. When he was with Williams, they won championships. When he went to Red Bull, they won championships. That's just who Newey is. And then you look at the car they have, and it's just there's I'm at a loss of words for how bad it is. And it doesn't seem to be getting better. It was bad in the first preseason testing, and it seemed to get worse in the second preseason testing. And then this weekend, I can't tell if it got better or worse. At least, like I said, at least they finished more laps than they expected. Maybe they were lying when they said, I think I can only do 25 laps. And in which case, that's probably smart because you need to try to psych somebody out somehow. Not only is the car not finishing races, it doesn't seem to have pace because in qualifying, I think Lance was 30 seconds off. Let me go back and look at qualifying. No, it was Fernando. That was free practice where Lance was 30 seconds off. So Fernando was a 121.969. Perez was a 122.605. Still not great. To even try to get out of the first drop round, he would have had to get into Q2, he would have had to drop 7/10, a little over 7/10. That's not great. And then when you look at FP3, the car was so bad that Alonso didn't even want to run FP3. Like, how? And maybe it wasn't FP3 because I'm seeing Fernando Alonso having a time in FP3. I'm confused now. Or maybe they just threw him out there. He only had 20 laps. I don't know. Either way, the car is just ridiculous. They got to find pace. They have to find reliability. I'm hoping that they fix the vibration issues and it fixes the reliability, because the other side of this coin is if the car is vibrating too badly, it's going to be breaking things and causing issues with reliability. So maybe that's the whole problem. Fix the vibration, and then all of a sudden, Aston Martin just looks amazing. Because also, if the vibration is so bad that they can barely hold on to the steering wheel, that's going to affect their pace as well. Chat asks, so what do you think it is with Aston Martin? Is it that there are a small amount of mechanics to pick from, as well as engineers? Other teams like Ferrari and Mercedes got them first. Why is it pretty much an unlimited budget that they cannot build a good car? I don't think it's anything of that nature. You have to remember that when Adrian Newey left Red Bull and went to Aston Martin, he took folks with him. So it's not an engineering issue. I don't think the mechanics are that bad. I think ultimately what the problem was, Honda said, we're going to pull out of F1. So the guys that built these championship engines for Honda said, you know what then? Bye. And they left Honda. Some went to Red Bull, and I don't know what the others did, but this is basically a new team of Honda engineers, and none of them have done anything in F1. So that's the biggest issue, is you have this new engine and nobody building it that knows what they're doing, apparently. And to make matters worse, Adrian Newey comes out and says, we didn't know this was a thing until 3 months ago. So now here's the problem there. Either Adrian Newey is lying to cover his tail, or somebody in the higher ups at Aston Martin really dropped the ball. Because how do you not find this out? This happened well before the season, and you find this out 3 months before. That's a problem. How do you not know this? How do you expect to win and not know who's building your stuff? If you're not building it yourself, you have to know who's putting hands on stuff. You wouldn't go hire somebody for a job and not know their qualifications, but you're going to let them build the engine for your really, 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 really expensive car and go, multi-million dollar car and go, we don't know who you are, but go ahead, build the engine. Now we don't know why there's vibration in the car. Well, it's because they don't know what they're doing. Like, that's the issue. They need to figure that out. If they can figure that out, I think it'll solve a lot of their issues. Because I don't think the mechanics are bad. It's not like they're sitting here dropping 7-second pit stops. Like I said, when Adrian Newey went there, a lot of engineers followed because it's Adrian Newey. He is one of the greatest to ever do it. You have Lawrence Stroll's pocket, his wallet, paying things, and his bankroll is absolutely insane. The only other thing that would be holding them back is Lance Stroll. And you can't even blame him this time because he can't even put the car on the track, so it can't be his fault. I would ultimately say, yeah, it's leadership issue. Leadership and engine building issue. And that comes back. I know a few episodes back we said we can't keep blaming Newey because he didn't build the engine, Honda did. But Adrian Newey is now the team principal. So that means this comes back on him for not finding this out before 3 months ago. And if he can't figure that out, I don't see how he can be a team principal. You have to know what's going on. I think at this point, Adrian Newey is still focusing more as an engineer because he's still the head engineer and less like a team principal focusing on all dynamics of the car. And you can't manage a team that way. We've seen great team principals fail because they miss aspects of the other aspects of the car and of the team. Now, with that being said, Adrian Newey has never been a team principal. So there's a learning curve to it, I think. I think that as the season goes on, he'll understand better. He also is trying to find his own footing. He has to figure out how to be a head engineer and be a team principal. He has both titles. That doesn't mean he can go, oh, I'm a team principal now. I'm going to let you deal with that. No, he still has to deal with engineering. But he does still have to do team principal duties. So, again, I think that's one of those things. First time doing it, give him a break on that regard. Let him get his feet wet. If next season is still the same way, then you have to start questioning, is he really the guy to be the team principal? And I think the answer there will be no. I think let him be the head engineer still, because he is one of the best engineers in F1 history. But I think the relevance on him being a team principal goes out the window. And a lot of people will question from the get-go, should he be a team principal, because it's a lot different than being an engineer. And with what he said, I'm kind of leaning towards no. Because how do you not ask these questions? And furthermore, he worked at Red Bull. How did he not know half the folks left? He would have had contact with them and gone, oh, this is what you're doing? Oh, maybe we shouldn't use Honda. Maybe we should, continue using Mercedes or another power unit other than Honda that had a whole bunch of nobody that have never worked in F1 working on their engines. Trying to think. Chat saying they don't know what the team principal on Aston Martin looks like. He's a really old guy that has been in the sport for ever. The last time Williams was winning championships, that's how long he's been in the sport. So look for the old guy in the green shirt. That's not Lawrence Stroll. There you go. Or just Google Adrian Newey and that'll come up. But I think that the hate on Aston Martin is not going to slow up any, because the more they open their mouths, the dumber they look and the more issues they have. And it sounds like they don't have the first idea on why. And that's a problem. Overall, I think Ferrari and Mercedes are the ones to watch this season. And I continue to think that. After this season, after this weekend, it's just put more in perspective on how much better over the field they are. Preseason testing, everybody said we don't know who's sandbagging. And that was true. And I said, I think Mercedes will be the superior qualifying team. I don't think they'll necessarily have the race pace. They came out. George was 0.6 faster over the rest of the field in qualifying. And then we come to race pace. And when they're racing the first stint, actually racing, no pit stops yet, Charles really was handing it to George. Charles was holding his own. It wasn't just George run away with it. That car is not good in dirty air, I don't think. It's good, don't get me wrong. But it's not better than the Ferrari. And I think that Ferrari having the smaller turbo to get a better launch off a start is going to keep them in the fight. And I think the fact that that Mercedes seems slower in dirty air is going to hurt them ultimately. And so that's why we're going to have a good fight through the rest of the season between them. We're going to I'm going to start doing this thing. We had talked about doing it when Alan and Amber were here. I never did, but doing one hot take a week. It's just interesting to see what y'all think. So, I'm trying to think of how I had a couple that I thought of. I think the hot take is that Hadjar actually fights with Max this season. A lot of people thought that Hadjar would be the next victim of the number 2 seed, but he did take 3rd place in qualifying. I know he didn't finish the race because the car failed. That's not on him, though. That's on the engineering. I think that Hadjar can fight with Max, and we will see the first time in a long time somebody fighting with Max in that 2nd seat. And I hate saying that because I wanted Yuki back in it no matter what. But I don't see him coming back over Hadjar. Now, that being said, he could come back in over Liam Lawson. And that would be very interesting. Next race. Let's see. Next race is China. My predictions for next race. We saw Lewis have a really good sprint there last race. Last year at that race. And we saw Ferrari not have a bad race there, but then they both got DQ'd for plank wear. That's not going to happen this time because it's not a ground effect error. The car is not scraping the ground nearly as much, so we don't have to worry about that, I don't think. I think that we could see Lewis win the sprint and Charles win the feature. And I think that China being a slower track, a much more windy track, the Ferrari is going to shine over the Mercedes. Those are my 2 takes for next week. I think the podium is going to be comprised of Charles winning, Lewis in 2nd, and George in 3rd. And who knows? It could be right, could be wrong. So far, I haven't been too far off the mark this season. So hopefully that trend continues because I would love to see Charles win a race. And I would love to see Charles win his first title. He's been very loyal to Ferrari and has been patient. He had a good car in 24. Just wasn't good enough. Max was just too good that season. And now he has Lewis as a teammate, so I see them at least winning a constructor's title. You're not going to have the issues that he had with Carlos Sainz being inconsistent. We know that Lewis is either really good or bad. There's no in between, and he's consistent. Based off of what we saw at Australia, he's going to be really good this season. And that's going to be really favorable for Ferrari. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for the rest of the season. Um, Make sure y'all follow us on Twitch, follow us on TikTok, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. Um, we are going to be more consistent now, and we're not going to be having any weeks missed. If there's no race, it's going to probably be mostly news and hot takes. But hey, it'll be fun. We'll try to come up with some very creative categories and things to talk about in the off weeks, and try to get some fun guest host on with us and go from there. So, like I said, if y'all haven't already, subscribe to us, um, follow us on pretty much all socials, and we will see y'all next time.